Division 2 is yet another shared world shooter and one that Liam McKelvey has played. Liam?
I have played it, yes, and I am Liam, can confirm.
And I'm Mike. It came out on March the 15th. It's the Ubisoft's latest latest big AAA game, I suppose. They're banging these out all the time. It's out on PC, PS4 and Xbox One, and it is very close to the Division 1 in many ways, isn't it?
It is. It is very, very close. Pretty much the same as Division 1, with some minor improvements from what I've noticed, mainly to do with how enemies take damage. Like, we're not a spongy anymore. They've sort of worked on that sort of, the suspension of disbelief that had to go into the first game, putting like in 30 bullets into a guy wearing a hoodie. They've sort of worked on that a bit.
That was absolutely my main problem with it. With the first one, I did enjoy the first one a lot, but the first one, it just didn't, something was wrong when you were just sort of shooting human enemies who were just in like vests and stuff, and they were just taking bullets like, it just didn't make sense. It's just sort of a big disconnect there for me. But they so you feel like they've addressed that quite well.
They have. It's still there to a tiny degree, but it is much better than it was in the first game.
How does Washington compare to New York? Because Washington is the new setting.
So I actually quite like Washington in this one, mainly because it's a lot more varied and open than New York. Because in Division 1, New York was kind of like a lot of tight alleyways and, streets and sort of like enclosed, almost claustrophobic areas, whereas Division 2 with Washington, there's a lot more focus on like big open fields. Like, a lot of missions take place in like wide open parks and stuff like that, and it seems to have a lot more focus on just variety in your environment. So instead of just like going cover to cover, car to car, there's like scaffolding you can climb. If you want to be a sniper, you can climb up on a high point. You want to just charge at them with a machine gun, there's like loads of like little bits of cover you can just use. And there's like more options for like flanking enemies and stuff. Like, you can sneak around them because you've got lots more space. Basically, it's a lot more open-ended, this one.
I mean, New York definitely sort of loomed over you in the first one, I thought. And that was, absolutely, I thought it was really good. Like, the skyscrapers felt like skyscrapers. They were really big, towering buildings above you, whereas, there's a lot of games where, because you're, like, sprinting up the side of these buildings, like in Prototype or Spider-Man or something like that, you don't quite feel the sense of scale. But this, in the Division 1, it did feel like properly huge, big skyscrapers all around you, and but then like you say, that does sort of make you feel like you're penned in a little bit. So this, conversely, they've opened it all up and they give it a different feel to the first one.
That sense of scale is still there, because the buildings, again, they still are massive. Like, you've got the White House as your main base of operations, and it does literally like tower over you when you first get to it.
What's the level of detail like in terms of the the NPC characters that are walking around? They've put a lot of effort into like the little animals this time, which is great.
Yeah. There's loads of wildlife just dotted about when you roam the streets and stuff. But it seems to be NPCs, quite a lot of them in this one compared to the first Division.
Yeah, it does feel busier.
Yeah, and you just see them like wandering around, and it'll pop up on your screen at a time like they're looking for water, or like, and you can give them supplies, and you'll get like an XP boost or maybe an item off them. And it feels like there's a lot more going on in the world this time around.
What's the like gunplay and stuff? We already talked about how the bullet sponginess has been sort of addressed a little bit, but do you feel like there's enough variety between the weapons and stuff this time around? Because this is another shared world shooter. The whole point, we've just been talking about in the podcast about the Anthem, situation with the loot not feeling, it's not really making much of a difference and stuff. And there's news stories about that. Does the loot and the items and the weapons and stuff, does that feel like there's enough variety, enough guns to mess around with, enough equipment to play around with? Have they done a good job of that?
So far, I feel like they've done a pretty decent job of it, because there's quite a few different weapon types. You've got like your submachine guns, assault rifles, big machine guns, which you can like mount on the like cover and just like suppress enemies with, sniper rifles, shotguns. You've got all your standard weapon types, and loot has been quite plentiful so far. I feel like I'm getting a new item or a new weapon every 5 minutes or so.
Yeah.
As for the quality of it, it feels a bit too incremental. At times, like, it doesn't feel like my gear is making big improvements every time I get a new like weapon or whatever.
Yeah,
it feels like it's maybe bumping my stats up by like 20 plus to your armor.
Yeah,
or like +4 damage on this rifle compared to my last rifle.
Yeah,
so it feels a bit.
The numbers are changing, but not.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's having too much of an effect on gameplay. But it's just like my numbers are slightly going up, and I haven't really noticed too much of an impact from that.
Enemy variety was a bit of a problem for me in the first one as well, because you basically had the big dude with a flamethrower. Well, did they even have flamethrowers or like a big weapon? Did. You had the person who ran out after you with a baseball bat, and then you had like just people with guns. And there's different factions in this universe and in the game where you've got like the cleaners or whatever they were called in New York, and they were the ones with the flamethrowers. But they really didn't feel like a huge amount of variety between the different groups that you were fighting. What's the enemy variety like in this, and how do they behave?
I think there's 3 or 4 factions in this one. The only ones I've encountered so far are the hyenas, who are like Mad Max style bandits going
classic around. Gotta get them in.
Yeah, they're going everywhere. They've got like gas masks on. They're like taking, I don't know, it's like a weird gas that they inhale that makes them stronger.
Of course, very aggressive piercings, I'd imagine. Eyebrows and stuff.
And they literally just like charge. A lot of them just charge at you, shouting stuff.
Yeah.
And then there's like the other group I've encountered so far. I think they're called the True Sons, and they're like this heavily armored militia who are all about like taking back liberty in the US and stuff like
topical. I like it.
Topical, yeah. But they're the only 2 I've encountered so far. But
do they feel different? Do they feel like when you're fighting one group compared to the other, do you know, I'm fighting these guys now?
They do a bit, yeah. Like the hyenas, they tend to just sort of like charge at you and blind fire at you a lot. Whereas these, the True Sons, have got a bit of a more like military tactics style to them. And they've
been reading a lot of books and watching a lot of documentaries.
Yeah, they try and like flank you a lot, get around the side of you, whereas the hyenas will just charge straight at you, like going a bit crazy. Okay,
that's interesting. That's good. That's like one of the 2, big points I had about the first one was the bullet sponginess and the behavior of the enemies. So it's good that they've sort of addressed that. Can you see yourself like sticking with this and playing with, because that's what they want you to do. They want you to be checking in on this months down the line. Has this got, maybe you don't have to say definitely yes or no, but do you think this has got the potential to keep your attention and then people who like this kind of game? Is it a good foundation for the next few months?
Yeah, I think it's got legs because it's got quite a lot of just sort of like content in the base game from what I've seen. Whenever you open the map, there's quite a lot of like side mission icons and world activities you can take part in. It's not like overwhelmingly done, like Assassin's Creed or whatever, where there's just like icon after icon on the map. This one's they're a bit more restrained with. It still looks like there's quite a decent amount of material for you to sink your teeth into at launch.
Yeah.
And I haven't got to endgame or anything like that yet, so I don't know what those endgame missions are like, but they have them like strongholds where you can attack enemy bases and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I can see this keeping you interested for at least at launch for a good while, because I've played it for I think about 7 hours. I'm level 11 and I still don't feel like I've made that big a dent in it.
The surface sort of
thing. And they've got like a roadmap where they're planning out free updates and episodes and stuff like that to the story throughout the year. So I think it's got a good chance at keeping people interested in the long run.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So that's The Division 2. It's out right now on PC, PS4 and Xbox One. If you've been playing it, let us know what you think about it. It has been out. It's been available for people sort of if they bought it early as well, right?
Yeah, so there was an Ultimate Edition which gave you early access to it, like pretty much every big game these days.
Yeah, well, so there's definitely going to be some people who have had a lot of time with it at this point, and they'll
there's going to be people who've already done everything you can do.
So let us know what you think of The Division 2 down in the comments. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. We'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.